Welcome everyone. My name is Nirit. You heard a little bit about us, but I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then what I'd really like to do is let each of these amazing humans introduce themselves just for a minute and give us some idea of what brings them to Volcano, and especially this amazing topic of disruption and what they're doing that's actually relevant, that may be interesting for you, because what we want to make sure happens is that you take home value. My name is Nirit. Like was mentioned before, I own a company called Impact, which operates in the US, in Israel, and in Portugal most recently. My background is in tech startups and taking new companies mainly to market, bringing large companies into the US market, turning around change management, things of that nature. Today, most of what I do is either due diligence, helping people to invest in Israeli technologies, or even more recently, bringing new businesses, whether it's venture relief from Ukraine into Portugal, or other types of companies that we're launching a fund to try and bring into the Portuguese innovation space. So without further ado, please, Barak, introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
No.
Hello?
Oh, there we go.
Hi. I'm Barak Berkowitz. I've been in the tech field since, in one way or another, since 1979. Yes. Were you born already?
And he was born in 75, so it's pretty impressive.
Okay. And I got involved after dropping out of elementary school and dropping out of high school and dropping out of college. And I got involved because of what tech can do to empower people to do things. And that's led me to a career that went from opening the first consumer computer store in America at Macy's, New York in 1980, running Apple's consumer marketing programs for 5 years in the United States, building Apple's strategy in Japan for distribution, founded a few companies, one that did wireless mobile internet, what a radical idea, in 1999. The internet in your hand, went public in 2000, went out of business in 2001, and then did a bunch of stuff in social media and worked, you saw on my resume, I think, worked at the MIT Media Lab. And my last job was I ran a company called Evie, which became Amazon Alexa. And what I care about, why I'm here, is one, I have to give back to this community. It's given me so much. And the opportunity to come to places that can gain more from this empowerment that technology provides is something that just makes me happy. And of course, Yanma I couldn't turn down anyway. So whatever, I had to be here.
Erez, בבקשה.
Hi, my name is Erez. I'm from Tel Aviv, and I was at Facebook for 5 years, and I recently joined Bright Data as VP Product. And our mission is to basically structure the open web and bring the open web to a data set that can be consumed by anyone for many, many reasons. And I do a talk about it tomorrow, if you're interested. And I'm here because of the two chairmen, Yossi and Janma. So Yossi invested in my gaming company in 2007, and Janma invested in Quiv in 2014 or 15, something like that. So both chairmen were my partners at some point.
Gideon, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I presume yes. So my name is Gideon. I've been in Silicon Valley the last 20 years. Prior to this, I've been 20 years in the Israeli tech scene. My claim of fame, I took 3 tech companies public on NASDAQ, 4 M&A transactions. In recent years, I've been doing mentorship, coaching with organizations such as Google for Startups, Plug and Play, and some other organizations. Happy to be. It's my first time here, and until now, having lots of fun.
So welcome everybody, and welcome all of you, and thank you for having us. Janma is a superstar in this room. We're very grateful to you. Let's just start. I'm going to try to begin by giving us a little bit of context, because the word disruptive in describing innovation is described by many people or interpreted in many ways. And what I'd like to begin doing with all of you is defining what we mean by disruptive innovation. So let me give you a little bit of context, and then we're going to let these guys kick around whatever definition they decide is best, so that we know where they're coming from when they give their comments. So some of you may have read a wonderful book called The Innovator's Dilemma, which was released in 1997 by Clayton Christensen of Harvard Business School, in which he coined this phrase of disruptive innovation, and he calls it the following. It's a process in which a smaller company, usually with fewer resources, is able to challenge an established business by entering at the bottom of the market and continuing to move up. So some of the classic, there are several classic examples: Uber, Toyota, and the release of Lexus. Toyota started at the way bottom. Then they started to move slowly up and chose to compete with the big guys with Lexus later on. But it's been a buzzword. But it's interesting, because if you open up the Webster's dictionary, you'll get a different kind of definition. It says, the expression causes something to be unable to continue in the normal way, to interrupt the normal progress or activity of something. If it's applied to business, really anything that enters a market and is successful can be seen as disruptive. At least that's how the term is often used today. This is clearly not the way it was defined by Clay Christensen. Clay Christensen was not someone who believed that anything that happens to be revolutionary is a disruption. I mean, what's disruption, guys? And what angle are you coming at it from? And what are you working on that you consider disruptive today? And what are the things that you're starting to recognize as disruption?
So Barak gave me the mic because I have a definition for disruption, which is innovation plus adoption. So innovation on itself is research, right? I can have a lab, I can do a lot of innovation, I can have something new, but unless it has adoption, unless the target market adopts it, use it over what they used to, or it's a completely new thing, then it's not really disrupting anything, right? It just sits there. So I think that there are two ways basically to do it. Either you innovate a new market, a new niche, and that's something you bring to the table so you don't have a competition, or you bring something to the market which is 10 times better than what there is in the market, and then it pushes it out, and that's a disruption. But basically that's my definition for disruption.
Clay likes you.
And for me, I think I'll add and just put on that, to me, it means displacement. To disrupt is to move out of the way something else, to break it, to interrupt it. And so the definition, the English definition, I think is the right definition, because what I've seen in my entire career is disruption after disruption after disruption. When I joined Apple Computer, we were 1,400 people, and IBM was 500,000 people, and IBM is in a totally different business today because they couldn't compete with us.
Gideon?
So I've always been moderate in the way I take life, and when people use the word disruption, I usually kind of nod my head and I say, I'd rather see evolution than revolution. I think that if you focus too much on disruption, you may miss the point of moving in a slower pace by making things really happen. Disruption was when Tesla changed the electric vehicle cars industry. They completely changed the radius, the impact of the battery. But most companies don't go this way. Most companies, I think, do not go the Apple way. And I encourage every entrepreneur here, whether it's a she or a he, focus on innovation, slower pace, can take you to greater distance.
Do you want to? Barak has something to say.
And suggest
We want to make it interesting today.
so the
we'll
contrarian
give you-
view will be don't go too slow.
I didn't say go slowly. Move fast, but think about always innovation.
So I'll try to bridge the two. I think, yeah, I'll try to bridge it. So there is a type of innovation for new stuff, and that should move really, really fast. When you have something that is completely new and you just want to iterate fast and move fast until you have product market fit, and you have products that are established and you don't want to break things. You know, at Facebook, we had a poster saying, move fast and break things. And at some point where there was adoption, there was a lot of money made, they changed it to move fast responsibly, right? Because you don't want to break the $10 billion a quarter income. So.
Thank you, the
but
peacemaker.
I just want to at least conclude something. Innovation, you have to move fast. Every startup needs to move as fast as possible. But it doesn't mean that you always disrupt the incumbent, etc. So move fast, but be very responsible.
Melly, one of the 4 pillars, I guess, for disruption was choosing wisely. Not everything is disruption. And by the way, it doesn't always mean that you have the best quality, right? Because you're coming in the low end of the market at times. So where do you think we're headed? I mean, we're sending, at least for me, I chaired the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Network of YPO and was on their board for 6 years. And one of the things over the last 2 years that we focused on from an entrepreneurial journey perspective during COVID was the changes in cycles of companies, the launches of companies. I mean, where are we headed? Do you see significant changes over COVID? Can you maybe identify some trends or even some industries and verticals to look for? I know when Barak and I spoke last week, you mentioned the travel industry, which of course has been sort of turned upside down and then turned back up. Are there other examples of that? Or the things that we should be looking for? Even geographies, if not verticals? Because you've all been all over the world.
I think that during COVID, what I've experienced living in Silicon Valley is a rapid change in telemedicine. I've seen more and more automation in software. All the topic of accounts payable, for instance, is today AI-driven, automation-driven. Telemedicine has made such a leap jump in the last few years that I think that without the COVID, we wouldn't have seen it. I think that it's extremely good position for countries in South America where people living in villages suddenly can use very similar technologies that we're seeing used at Stanford Hospital and other places. So to me, telemedicine was to move in this way. I think that automation is also improve the world in the next few years.
That's a world got a lot smaller. Accessibility. Anyone else?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to predict where we're going to go. I would say that COVID was more an accelerant than a disruptant. Yes, it disrupted a lot of the ways we live, but it also accelerated changes that were already happening, and those changes have not completely slowed down. I know you may see some stats that seem to imply, well, you know, Zoom is not growing as fast as it was before. How many of you used Zoom before COVID? And how many of you use Skype instead before COVID? And how many use Skype now for meetings? So the changes, the acceleration of these changes, I don't know. What I do know is every person in this room has the opportunity to affect that direction. Every person in this room has the opportunity to decide where that's taking us, but you have to get on top of the dragon. You can't expect to just run by the side of the dragon and get there.
Erez, any thoughts?
Janma sent me to take a video of Yossi, and I went to his house. And did you show it this morning? Tomorrow. Okay. So I went to Yossi's house and filmed him because he couldn't come. And in his room, he has a book about 100 years of innovation, where experts for the past 100 years predicted the future. 100% of them got it wrong.
That's why Barak is afraid to do that.
So exactly.
He wants to keep his winning streak.
Exactly. So nobody knows where we are going. I think that the only thing that I do know is where the money is being invested right now. And again, coming from Meta, I know that they have a 10-year plan for augmented reality. I know that Apple is also in that race. Not many others, except for Chinese companies, are also in that race. But that's a fight for the next computing platform, because basically Facebook lost that mobile one, and now it's been controlled by Apple and Google. So at least Meta will be the Android of augmented reality. That's their hope, maybe.
Thank you. So, Gideon, you and I spent some time talking about the ethics of disruption. I mean, are there ethical concerns and ramifications of disruption, these quick disruptions that you're talking about? Should there be guidelines? Should there be some sort of body that, I mean, you came from Meta. You're dealing with that all the time. What are the parameters, and how should we be approaching disruption from an ethical standpoint?
So the older I get, I become more and more responsible. And 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was a savvy tech executive, I didn't care much about other things. I was so impressed with what we do on the technology side. But as I kind of mature, as I see my 4 children get into the millennial stage, and I see what young people pay attention to, it impacts people like me. So I think that when you look at a lot of the big companies' behavior in the last 5-6 years, there were a lot of bad things that happened, such as usage of data, personal data, by Facebook and Google, Uber that was dealing with women in a very negative ways, and many more examples. And I was also able, through my work, to work with European organizations. And living in the States, I never understood why the Europeans are always slowing down with all kinds of boundaries and policies, the effect of the Googles and the Facebooks. But suddenly I noticed that without these barriers, these companies can run without any blockage on their behavior. So I do feel that just like the written media, just like TV, just like radio, there should be some bodies that should sometimes look at the way technology companies are dealing with new inventions. Let me remind you that Facebook has tons of data about us. The same goes to Apple. The same goes to Google and many other companies. And I'm concerned that some of these companies don't have the right people and it can offset pressure from the top executives. And that's why you need sometimes the government or other bodies to put some kind of a stop sign and tell them, please think about what you're doing. And again, I wasn't like this 10, 20 years ago. I changed.
So Erez, so to you, I mean, whose job is it to do the right thing? Is there an issue of civil liberties? Is Mark Zuckerberg in the wrong or in the right? I mean, is there an issue of freedom of speech, and where do we draw the line?
I think that Facebook specifically always called for regulation, and it never happened. Nobody picked up it. Like in the States, there are still rules that are being followed by, okay, GDPR, 5 years later, let's do something only in California. and it's not being really adopted. So two things I want to say about it. First, it's really hard to think about any company, any startup that is growing really, really fast to ask them, you know what, you need to stop and think about what can be done with this new thing that you just created, right? It's like, if nobody forces you to do that, you just run and develop. And I think that what I saw just before I left Facebook, became Meta, they, for augmented reality, they created a group just to think about what can be the effects of building a device that's on your head and need to interact with people. Even the shape of the head need to be adapted to everyone, right? Not just to white Americans, white male Americans. Machine learning visually need to recognize all skin colors, right? And so on and so forth. So I think big companies have both the awareness now and the money to do that, while small startups really don't have that and they just want to run. And I think that regulation is a blessing if done properly, which is which is hard on government.
So thank you. So Barak, is this an issue of civil liberty? Are ethics an impediment to innovation and disruption?
So no, I don't think ethics are an impediment to innovation or disruption. What I think is that when you start building something, you never know what it's going to do. You never know how it's going to impact society. I ran a social media company from 2002 to 2007. Knowing what we built and what it would do would be very hard. A government trying to regulate at the beginning what it would do would be nearly impossible. I think about, this place is called Volcano. The summit's called Volcano. There are volcanoes out here. I spent a lot of time in Japan, and some of the active volcanoes in Japan have lava walls. The lava walls do not attempt to stop the lava. It would be foolish to attempt to stop the lava. They try to create a path for the lava to go to where it'll do the least harm. And for me, regulation needs to be like that. It needs to be about how to steer gently, realizing the limitations of what you can do in advance of knowing what impacts are going to be. And realizing that it's about a steering. GDPR is a great example. The biggest effect you see in GDPR today is that you have to click every single page and dismiss the cookie warning. The meaning of that is everybody clicks on every page and dismisses the cookie warning. That was not GDPR's goal. GDPR's goal was to change the way privacy was thought of. And I believe the Europeans failed by focusing on a mechanical thing to deal with the real thing, which was the steering of the ideas of privacy, the education of people about it. There was no culture for driving cars till there were cars. There are rules of the road, but there's culture too.
Thank you.
I want to add something about China.
Okay.
It's not regulated, not in the standard of the West in any term. And there was just an article today released about a company that has a camera app for beautification. So you take a selfie and it puts makeup on your face and you can choose whatever makeup. But now they use the same camera to tell you what are your personal traits based on your photos. Okay? Are you, I don't want to say, there are many types of what you can be, right? Is that ethical? Is that something they can use? Like, nobody will regulate that. And I think in general, China need to be on our watch list.
For sure. So keep the microphone because I have a question for you next. Gideon, did you want to add something?
I just want to add something. So I'm actually approaching the entrepreneurs in this venue. Those of you who are going to deal with AI in the future, please remember this conversation today and act responsible. And when you set your company and the teams working on AI and the decision process, remember what we discussed and put some either boundaries, or as Barak calls it, put these
Guides
that will tilt the wave towards a more responsible area. It's up to you to make a decision how your companies will look in the future. Be responsible to the society that you're part of.
So, actually, I think you just coined an interesting concept, Barak, of guiding the lava. So let's guide the lava. So Erez, each of us have a little bit of a different perspective in terms of our work. You're kind of unusual with your background of both top-down and bottom-up, right? I mean, you've done the mergers and acquisitions themselves, but you're really a product guy. You're a product guru. I mean, is disruption a top-down or a bottom-up process? I mean, is there a way that it works better, and is it different on both? I mean, because one of the parts of the explanation of Christensen's explanation of disruption is that it's not a product or a service, it's a process, right? Can you address that a little bit? Because you've seen it from both perspectives, I think.
So let's define it. What is bottom up and what is top down? Okay, so top down is when leadership comes to you and say, this is our business goal, this is what we decided, go execute, right? And they do it either with or without the backing data and research, or they're just moved by the competition. And they want to do it because they saw the competitor do it and they heard that they are doing it and they want you to do it. This is top bottom, right? And the bottom up approach is that you listen to your audience, you listen to your market, you listen to your client, and you try to see where is the pain, like a doctor, right? Where are you hurt? Oh, I listened that you, this is the pain point. Now let's see what is the best solution to approach it. Let's test, let's run tests. Whether it's a drug or drug testing, or whether it's a device or a product or a service. And I think that most of the times what I saw is that the bottom-up approach worked much better. And the top-down worked only when it's brute force with a lot of money. So having a new product to the market by brute force, you'll need to spend billions of dollars to try and get the adoption. But if you have listened to the pain point of your customers and you get the right product to their hand in the right time and in the right price point, then you'll see adoption, and with the right business model, you also see it spread and become viral and adopted. So it's
interesting. You're reminding me very much of an interesting conversation that I had. I mean, some of you know that I take groups of YPOers and others to Israel every year for an innovation immersion. I'm expecting some Guatemalans this year. I'm incredibly blessed. But one of the years when I was looking for a host academic institution, because we partner every year with a different institution, I remember calling the Weizmann Institute, and I said to Daniel Zeifman, I said, we're coming with an innovation group. And he said, we don't do innovation, we do science. And he hung up. And he said to me, we'll go looking for treatments for cancer and solving a problem. If it happens to spin out into a product, so be it. But if you want innovation, go call the Technion. It took me 3 years to get in that door and explain to him that what he's doing is innovation. So there's really a conceptual change that needs to happen. Any other comments from the others on the same question? Top down, bottom up? Because I have more questions for you. You needn't worry.
So I was an executive, but my daughter is a product manager. So I get every day, I get a lecture from my daughter, who is 29, how things should be managed. So as again, years change or move, I am accepting more and more what she tells me. And I usually listen to the young generation. And what I notice on her behavior and this again applies to you, what you said about bottom up. I think that you have to be tuned to your customers, because at the end of the day, we solve problems that the customers, what are the pain points they have? So if you listen to the pain points coming from the bottom, meaning the users, most probable you'll have a better product. Management can set a direction, but the features have to come always by listening to the users.
Don't say features, say experiments.
Sorry.
Don't build features. Build experiments.
בעברית. Just say it in Hebrew and then we'll all understand each other.
Because features is something that you build and you fall in love with and you don't want to give up. An experiment is something that you're willing to give up because it was just an experiment. It's the same thing, but it's how you phrase it, right? Don't fall in love with your experiment because it might fail. There is another one coming and another one coming, okay, until you succeed.
It's so funny. I've been in Silicon Valley 20 years, and a lot of people say I've been Americanized by now, and suddenly I talk direct, while the Israeli actually talks a little bit more American.
I become American.
But my first,
it happens.
Janma, my first panel here, it was an introduction of a panel like this, and one was from Hong Kong, and one was sitting in Japan, and one was in Silicon Valley, and one was sitting, all of them were Israeli. We make trouble everywhere. We're always disrupting. Barak, any comments? Because the next question is yours, and it's a big one, so you can decide. So Barak is really very interesting to listen to, and I hope in addressing this next question, you'll also want to come in here more, because he'll be addressing it more in depth in his own keynote.
I've run 2 AI companies. I'm in the midst of trying to get another one going, whether I run it or not. And AI is a very complex thing. The things I could say, and I think we said, I ran a company called Evie, which became Amazon Alexa. We never knew what Evie would become when it went to Amazon. We could never have imagined what Evie would do when it went to Amazon. What we did was we built something that worked. It is not an intelligent being. But we will come to a time now where AIs are outpacing us, in fact, we already are, in many, many things we can do. And we need, again, to be able to steer that. Don't ban it. You cannot ban the lava coming down that hill. Don't think about it, because then China will be the only place building AIs. You need to figure out ways to ethically steer this and deal with where we're going in the future and envision a human life and a human civilization driven by technology that's better than we have today.
Thank you. Any other quick comments? Because we're getting low on time, and we're just going to want to give some parting words.
I just don't know how it happened that we stopped calling it what it is, which is machine learning, and we switched to AI, because there is no AI at the moment. There's, like, we all do machine learning.
Have you told Yuval Harari about that? Because he's making a lot of money talking about it.
But somebody... we need to talk about that in summer.
4 Jews, 6 opinions. Anything else on this topic before we start to wrap up?
So I've got a comment about something else. As you know, I don't always follow the rules, but here is something that I want you entrepreneurs here to...
Well, you're actually going to open the final question, which is kind of what kind of advice, practical advice, some direction that we can give the people in this room as parting words from each of us to tie up the session that now has 1 minute and 15 seconds left.
So here's my advice. I've been mentoring in the last 6 years many entrepreneurs from Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Europe, Africa, Mexico, Brazil. And one of the things I noticed is that they always look at Silicon Valley as setting the rules. Yes, there are some great things you must follow that are done in Silicon Valley. But each one of you comes from a different country. And please focus on the pain points you have in your own country, first of all. because your job as citizens who live in your own countries is to help people in your own place. So don't always try to do another Uber in Guatemala. Don't always try to do another dish dash in Guatemala. Try to look what bothers the people here and focus on giving them solution to these things. If you focus on this, you can bring a big change in your own countries. That's the advice I gave you.
Thank you. Erez, בבקשה.
Great advice. Great advice. I want to add on top of it, basically, saying about trends, about the book that I mentioned. Nobody knows where we are headed. So it's not important to follow trends. Anyone has an NFT now? You know, what's the value of them right now? So don't do that. and just go after the pain points. Go after real, tangible things that people actually need, and that will solve you the need part, the adoption part, the money part. Everything will follow once you follow a real pain point, once you solve a real need.
Barak, בבקשה.
I am not sure I have much to add to that. I agree with both of them. And all I can say is, don't believe anybody can give you rules. If you're not breaking rules, you're doing something wrong. And that includes whatever we set up here.
Break it.
Break it.
Prove us wrong.
And move forward and prove us wrong and build a better place where you are.
And my words of advice as somebody who breaks things all the time is never waste a good crisis. I think you'll find the best innovation happens at the moments that we least expected. And if you look very closely at the times of the pandemic and the crisis, the people who got things done are the ones who were innovating and not sitting on their hands and were investing in technology and infrastructure. Get shit done and don't wait for anyone's permission. Toda rabba, yalla, vamos. Get out there and do it. Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be back. Thanks for everyone making it possible to be back at Volcano.